alter egos, pseudonyms, aliases, secret identities. With words like these, you probably think that I would be talking about comics or something, but no, I'm actually talking about rap.
But what do these words have to do with rap?
I'm glad you asked. Rappers have been using alter egos, pseudonyms, and aliases for a variety of reasons throughout the history of rap. Some artists are much more secretive about it than others, and some are very outspoken about it. I personally love when artists do this. I feel like it adds a whole nother level to the music and it makes it a lot more interesting. So let's take a look into why these rappers have secret identities. Just a couple things to note before we jump into it. The first thing is that the more we get into the video, the more less known and secretive these aliases will get. I'm going to start off with some more well-known ones to get those out of the way. And the second thing is I'm not going to go over every single alias or alter ego in rap because there's just way too many. I'm just going to be doing what I think are some of the coolest ones and some of the most notable. Symbolic alter egos. These are probably the most common. Most of them are well known and talked about by the artists, unlike some future sections in the video. I'd also like to clarify that when I say alter ego, I'm not referring to a nickname. Some artists will have alter egos but treat them more like a nickname, kind of like Uzi going by Baby Pluto. These are alter egos that are used to symbolize different ideas, personalities, or emotions. So starting off with the most popular one, we have Slim Shady. As violent as Eminem is, his alter ego Slim Shady was used to show his even darker and angrier side. On the song Real Slim Shady, Eminem mentions in every single person there's a Slim Shady lurking, making it pretty obvious that the idea of Slim Shady applies to everybody else. What this means is everyone has an angrier, darker, more aggressive side, regardless of who they are. Slim Shady was actually created because of his group D12, also known as the Dirty Dozen. The group had 6 members, and to get to that 12, each of them decided to create an alter ego, which I didn't know for a long time, so I think that's pretty cool. Fun fact, Royce da 5'9", Eminem, and D12 were the people that really got me into rap. I was in like 7th grade listening to them on Pandora. If you're not familiar with them, make sure to check them out. Kill Edward. Kill Edward was an alter ego that J. Cole adopted on his album KOD. Edward was actually the only feature on the album. The first time Kill Edward was seen was actually a few days before the release of KOD when a song was posted called Tidal Wave, just a little reference, and fans thought it sounded suspiciously similar to J. Cole. Kill Edward raps about temptations and drug use, which seemed to be inspired by his stepdad, whose name was Edward. Cole's mentioned many times in his music things along the lines of killing his stepdad or how he wouldn't mind if he died, and this obviously inspired the name Kill Edward. But why does J. Cole feel this way towards his stepdad in the first place? It's not because he's crazy, but he's actually mentioned many times how his stepdad was abusive towards his mom, and for that reason he had hate for him. Kill Edward raps with a weird mix and a lower pitch, and he represents Cole's advocacy against drugs. Igor. This is another wildly popular alter ego from Tyler the Creator. I know that Tyler has a bunch of other alter egos like Wolf, Sam, and Dr. TC, but I think his Igor persona was done perfectly. Igor represents a part of Tyler's personality, his emotional side. Not only that, but Igor has his own unique style and look that Tyler created just for this album. I saw Tyler live at Lollapalooza last year and all the lights went out, Igor's theme started playing, and the next thing you know, Igor pops up on stage like a whole new character. Is pretty cool. The album begins with an awkward love triangle, and Igor goes through many stages of emotion throughout the entirety of the album. Not only is Igor used to represent emotion, but he's also used to tell a story. Makaveli. This is one of the most interesting aliases, especially because of all the conspiracy theories surrounding it. Right before Tupac died, he was gearing up to release an album called The Don Illuminati, The 7-Day Theory. Prior to this album, Tupac had been referring to himself as Makaveli the Don, but this upcoming album was the first proper introduction to this alias. He chose the name Makaveli because of an Italian philosopher by the same name with different spelling. The philosopher's way of thinking really resonated with Pac, so much so that he decided to adopt the name as his rap persona. However, some people think there's more to it than meets the eye. In Machiavelli's book, Art of War, he talks about faking your death to deceive your enemies. I'm sure most of you can see where this is going, but a lot of conspiracy theorists think that because Tupac liked this guy's teachings, he was following that idea of killing himself or faking his death. I don't know. So a lot of people think that Pac faked his death because of this reason. Although it is unfortunate that we never got to see or learn more about this alias. Producer pseudonyms. This one's pretty obvious, but producer pseudonyms are just names that artists or rappers will produce under rather than using their artist name. It adds another layer of mystery, which I think makes the art more interesting. Big fans of these artists may be aware of it, but the general public probably is not. So we're going to start off with one of my favorite producer pseudonyms, which is randomblackdude. This is Earl Sweatshirt's producer alias, and despite him having a funny name, he actually has produced a ton of music. He's produced songs for Mac Miller, G-Herbo, Mavi, and of course, Earl Sweatshirt. I didn't know this for a while, but Earl is actually a super talented producer, and he's produced some of his biggest songs like Chum, Sunday, and a large chunk of his discography. He's also produced big songs for Mac like New Faces V2 and The Star Room. But my favorite Favorite part about this pseudonym has to be Earl hyping him up on Twitter as if he's some random guy. I love when artists have their alter egos interact with themselves. It's always pretty funny. Metal Fingers. Metal Fingers is MF Doom's producer alias, and I have to say it's one of the coolest aliases there is. Everything about MF Doom is pretty cool, but this producer alias is just unnecessarily hard to me. I guess it's just the name, it just sounds so cool. But earlier this year I actually learned that the MF in MF Doom stands for two things. It can stand for either Metal Face, which is Doom when he's rapping, or Metal Fingers, which is Doom when he's producing. People tend to focus on Doom's lyrical ability, so his amazing production is severely underrated. He's produced the majority of Food and many other great Doom tracks like All Caps and Doomsday. Metal Fingers released 10 volumes of his Special Herbs series, which were just his instrumentals packaged in the form of an album. Most of the tracks were actually named after plants, and Metal Fingers was only active between 2001 and 2005. Bud Dwyer. Bud Dwyer is the producer alias of Scrim, a member of Suicide Boys. He produces the majority of the Suicide Boys catalog and has produced pretty much all of their big songs like Kill Yourself Part 3, Antarctica, Paris, Southside Suicide, and many more. His production style is pretty unique and he's well known for his frequent sampling. He often samples vocals, usually vocals from old Memphis rappers such as 3 6 Mafia, but the most interesting about this alias is its name. Bud Dwyer was actually a politician from Pennsylvania who called a press conference and then killed himself. This is clearly an allusion to the name of the group, and they even released an EP in reference to Bud Dwyer. Artist aliases. These are aliases that artists use to release music separately from their regular stage names. These are typically a lot less known to people unless you're a really big fan of that artist, and some of them were actually intentionally secretive. Each of these artists do it for a different reason, which makes it very interesting. Quasimoto and Yesterday's New Quintet. Quasimoto is Madlib's alter ego where he raps. If you're not familiar with Madlib, he's a legendary producer, super talented person who's worked with tons of legends in the industry, but he wanted to give rapping a try. So he began rapping over his own beats, but he wasn't a fan of his voice, so he decided to pitch his vocals up, and thus Quasimoto was born. But probably more interesting than Quasimoto, Madlib had another alter ego known as Yesterday's New Quintet. Yesterday's New Quintet is a group entirely made up of Madlib's other alter egos and pseudonyms. Rather than rap, the group made jazz music and released multiple projects together. Some of the individual members also created solo projects. Some of these other members Madlib created include Malik Flavors, Monk Hughes, Amon Miller, Joe McDuffrey, and many more. These fictitious artists also collaborated with real artists, making this mess of aliases even more confusing. I don't think I've ever seen another artist release music under so many different aliases. I don't know if Madlib is schizophrenic or just super creative, but this is very impressive. Okay, so after a little research, I found a quote from Madlib where he says himself that he's kind of schizophrenic, and another where he says he's musically schizophrenic, so it makes a little bit more sense now. King Geedorah and Viktor Vaughn. The same way that MF Doom created the Doom character, he also created these two. At this point, Doom's basically created his own multiverse of aliases, but King Geedorah is a character that Doom created based off of King Geedorah from the Godzilla movies, which was basically a three-headed dragon-looking thing from space. Doom says in an interview that King Geedorah channels information from space to Doom, and Geedorah was also a member of a collective called Monsta Island Czars, a rap group formed by the monster alter egos of multiple rappers, all based off of the Godzilla movies. Aside from appearing on a few Doom tracks, King Geedorah also released his own album called Take Me to Your Leader in 2003. Viktor Vaughn is another one of Doom's many aliases and a fan favorite. He's named after Dr. Doom's real name, which is Victor Von Doom. In one interview, Doom describes Viktor Vaughn as a scientist and rapper from another dimension where hip-hop is banned, but he also exists in Doom's dimension since he was featured on the song Fancy Clowns with MF Doom. On that song, Viktor Vaughn's girlfriend cheated on him with MF Doom, so they got into a little bit of a verbal fight. It was pretty entertaining to hear Doom go back and forth with himself on the same song. Doom essentially created his own multiverse of artists with cool collaborations and crossover episodes. There's no doubt in my mind he was definitely one of the most creative rappers we've ever seen. Captain Murphy. Perhaps the most interesting alias on this list, we have Captain Murphy. This is the alias of Flying Lotus. First, if you're not aware of who Flying Lotus is, he's a fantastic producer who's been in the game for a very long time. He's produced songs like Wesley's Theory by Kendrick Lamar and SDS by Mac Miller, and he also just did the soundtrack for Yasuke. I think that's how you say it. I don't know. I'm just assuming it's like Sasuke but with a Y. Maybe it's Yasuke. Anyways, Captain Murphy dropped an album called Duality in 2012. At the time though, no one knew who it was. People speculated that it was either Tyler the Creator or Earl Sweatshirt with pitched down vocals because of how he sounded and how he rapped. People also thought this because Earl was one of the few features on the album. After a few weeks went by of people guessing of who it might be, Flying Lotus revealed himself as Captain Murphy. Because of his close association with Adult Swim, some of his music was featured on Adult Swim, and he even got his own animation. Murphy even had a song called Between Villains villains with Earl Sweatshirt and the aforementioned Viktor Vaughn, who, if you somehow forgot, is MF Doom. If you made it this far, you're probably wondering why I haven't mentioned Mac Miller yet. You may even be seething that I haven't mentioned him yet. Your face is all red with anger. The steam's coming out of the top of your head. Well, fear not. The reason I haven't included Mac Miller in this video, even though I really wanted to, is because I made a video detailing every single one of his aliases and his alter egos, all the way from the well-known Larry Fisherman to the hardly known INR and Parson Brown. So make sure to check that video out if you haven't already. Anyways, thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.